Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked into the eyes of the woman you love and suddenly felt like a stranger in her gaze? Like something sacred between you was quietly rewritten when you weren't looking. You didn't see a breakup text. There was no slammed door. No dramatic betrayal, but something in her body language shifted. A silence replaced the way she used to light up when you entered the room. And when you laugh with your best friend, it's no longer carefree. It's haunted by a flicker of doubt you're ashamed to admit you feel. This isn't just about jealousy. This is about the subtle death of trust, the unraveling of something invisible but real. Because sometimes the betrayal doesn't come like a thunderstorm. It slips in through a smile, a missing glance, a joke that hits a little too hard and stays just long enough to change everything. Today, we're not here to play detective. We're here to explore, to reflect, to give language to that uneasy knowing so many men feel but are too proud or too afraid to name. Because if she slept with your best friend, you won't find it in her texts. You'll feel it in the energy, the awkward timing, the strange intimacy that doesn't include you anymore. Have you ever found yourself lying next to her and yet feeling like she's not really there with you? Maybe her body is present, warm, maybe even affectionate, but there's a kind of detachment in her touch, a pause in the places she used to lean into, a coolness in the way she pulls away just a second sooner than she used to. You chalk it up to stress, to work, to hormones, but somewhere deeper you feel it. Something shifted, and when that shift coincides with a growing closeness between her and the person you trusted the most, your best friend, something inside you can't help but ache. You see, the wounds that hurt the most are not always loud. They're not shouted from rooftops or sent in long texts at midnight. They come through whispers. They're coded into small, everyday behaviors, the kind that only the attuned notice. And most men, we feel them, but we rarely know how to name them. So today we are going to name them together. Because a man deserves to understand the story behind his intuition, especially when it comes to something as sacred as loyalty from his woman and from his brother. The first sign is subtle, but it can pierce through your chest like a splinter you keep pretending isn't there. It's the shift in eye contact. Before, when she looked at you, it felt like connection, presence, maybe even admiration. But now when she looks at you, there's a flicker, quick, fleeting, but undeniable, of guilt. And what's worse, she doesn't hold your gaze the way she used to, not because she doesn't care, but because the weight of her own secret burns too heavy to meet your eyes without giving herself away. And then there's how she looks at him. That's the part you try not to see. The way her eyes linger on your best friend a second too long at dinner, the way they share a glance during a joke you weren't part of, a glance that feels lived in, familiar, as if there's already an inside world built between them, and you're somehow outside of it. You might wonder if you're just imagining it, if you're paranoid, insecure, jealous. But let me tell you something about women, and about emotional fidelity. When a woman has crossed a line, her eyes will tell on her long before her mouth ever does, and not in a dramatic, obvious way, but in these gentle, guilty, evasive looks she doesn't know how to hide. Now let's speak of the second sign. One that hurts in a different way, because it's not about what you see. It's about what she no longer says. Silence, the absence of stories. You used to know everything. Every little update from her day, every random moment with friends, every awkward encounter, her laughter, her rants, her reflections, they came to you first. But suddenly, you notice she's quiet. She skips over her weekend. She's vague about who she was with. You ask her how the evening was and she says, "It was fine." Not because there's nothing to say, but because there's too much to hide. And when your best friend starts doing the same, when he stops talking about her, about nights out, about who came along, about how they ran into each other at that bar you all used to frequent, well, that's when the silence screams. Men think betrayal is about action, about catching someone in the act. But true betrayal is often more about omission, the hiding, the erasing of detail, the way people start protecting their lies by saying less, not more. And then, almost without warning, the third sign makes itself known. You feel it in her body, not in the way she touches you, but in the way she doesn't. Affection used to be organic, natural, a kiss when you passed each other in the hallway, a playful nudge, that soft brushing of your arm in public that said, "You're mine and I like that." It wasn't always sexual, it was relational, it was emotional. But now, when you touch her, there's resistance. Or performance. She might still let you kiss her, might even reach for your hand, but it doesn't feel like a pull. It feels like a habit, like something she's doing to avoid suspicion. And worse, her desire feels disconnected. Sex becomes either too much or too little. Some women, in the wake of a secret affair, try to overcompensate. They initiate intimacy more than usual, not because of passion, but because of guilt. They're trying to convince you that everything's normal, and convince themselves that they're not betraying you by trying harder in bed. Other women withdraw completely. They can't bring themselves to be close because their body now associates passion with someone else. But here's the catch. Both behaviors look so different, and yet they stem from the same emotional truth. Their loyalty has cracked. And the guilt, whether it explodes or implodes, begins to seep into how they touch you or how they don't. You might feel it most in the timing. She's affectionate when you're out in public, when others are around, but behind closed doors there's a chill. You reach for her in bed, and she turns away with an excuse about being tired. Or worse, she fakes a smile and lets you do what you need, emotionally absent. You can sense it. You know her energy. You've kissed her when she was open, and you've kissed her when she wasn't. And now, you feel like you're in the latter more often than not. And all the while, your best friend, he feels just a little more distant too. He doesn't call like he used to, doesn't show up as often, and when he does, there's a new awkwardness between you. An invisible wall. You're both pretending like everything's the same, but the rhythm is off. The inside jokes don't land. The laughter sounds hollow. Betrayal has a rhythm. It changes the frequency of people's presence. The spaces between them grow, not always in size, but in tension, in avoidance, in energy. And if you pay attention, you'll realize it's not in the dramatic betrayals that people break you. It's in the quiet dissolving of intimacy, in the way they stop showing up in their spirit, even when their body is still around. Let's stay with that feeling, that ache in your chest when you can't quite explain what's wrong, but everything feels a little off. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. And that matters more than you think. There's a quiet pain that lives in the man who begins to question the loyalty of two people he thought he knew. It's not just heartbreak, it's disorientation, a kind of emotional vertigo where you no longer trust the ground beneath your feet. You wonder if you imagined it, if maybe you're overthinking, but your gut, it doesn't lie. Not when something sacred has shifted in the space between your woman and your best friend. Let's stay with that, because the fourth sign isn't just about her, it's about you. You begin to feel like the outsider in your own life. She used to bring you in, into her world, into her moods, into her silly moments and random thoughts. But now, there's an emotional distance you can't quite cross. She still smiles at your jokes, still listens, still says, I love you, but the way she says it, it's different, like she's remembering to say it, rather than feeling it. And your best friend, he used to be your anchor, the guy you could text anything to. Who knew your heart? But now, when you talk to him, it feels like he's choosing his words too carefully. Like he's dancing around something, giving you the illusion of connection, but not the real thing. You see, betrayal doesn't just break trust, it reshapes belonging. When a woman sleeps with your best friend, whether it was a one-time thing or an emotional slide into something more, the triangle it creates is unbearable. There's her, there's him, and then there's you looking in, wondering how the two people you loved most started looking at each other like you were no longer there. This brings us to the fifth sign, one that's hard to talk about, because it makes you question your own worth. She starts comparing you to him, not always directly, but in little ways. She praises his style, his ambition, the way he tells stories. You'll be sitting together, watching a movie, and she'll say, that's exactly the kind of joke he would make. And it stings, not because she's complimenting him, but because she's not thinking about what that comparison means to you. You start noticing how she lights up when she tells a story about him. Maybe it was weeks ago. Maybe it was something innocent, but her face softens in a way it doesn't when she talks about you. You see it in the way she speaks about his successes. And the worst part is she doesn't even realize she's doing it, because her mind, her attention, her emotional energy, it's drifting. And she doesn't have to be in bed with him for you to feel it. Emotional cheating often starts long before the physical ever happens. The body only follows where the heart has already wandered. And you begin to shrink, not because you're weak, but because the person who once made you feel seen is now seeing someone else with the same admiration you used to receive. Let me say this to you directly. Comparison is a slow kind of betrayal. When she starts highlighting his strengths in ways that dim your own light, it becomes harder for you to feel confident, secure, rooted. You begin to second-guess yourself, your masculinity, your presence. And you wonder, am I not enough? But this has never been about you not being enough. It's about two people who failed to protect the sacred space that once included you. And the sixth sign is the one that most men ignore until it's too late. She picks fights, small, frequent, pointless arguments. You forgot to call her back. You didn't notice her haircut. You didn't say the right thing at the right time. But what you don't realize is that these aren't just arguments. They're displacements, emotional redirections. Because guilt, when not dealt with consciously, needs to justify itself. When a woman is carrying a secret, especially one that violates the foundation of her relationship, she may begin to look for reasons to be angry at you. Why? Because staying mad at you makes it easier to live with what she did. If she can tell herself that you're careless, inattentive, distant, then maybe she's not a bad person for crossing a line with someone else. And sometimes this anger isn't even loud, it's subtle, cold shoulders, passive-aggressive remarks, withholding affection, an invisible scorecard you didn't even know you were playing against. It's not that she wants to destroy the relationship. Often women who've betrayed their partner, especially with someone close to him, don't want to break things. They want to repair what they shattered without confessing the shatter. But guilt has a smell. You feel it in the way she distances herself after a moment of intimacy. You feel it when you try to fix things and she resists, not because she doesn't want resolution, but because resolution means coming clean, and she's not ready. And your best friend, he avoids conflict too. He's quieter around her when you're in the room. He speaks in shorter sentences, doesn't joke like he used to. Or maybe he overcompensates, talking too much, laughing too hard, trying to perform loyalty instead of living it. This triangle becomes a minefield, and you, the man caught in the middle, begin to question your own mind. You wonder, am I imagining this? Am I losing it? But let me tell you, your body knows the truth before your brain catches up. The tension in your chest, the tightness in your gut, the sleepless nights, that's your nervous system whispering what your heart is afraid to say out loud. And here's something we rarely talk about. Men are taught to be strong, stoic, rational. But this very conditioning is what leaves you unequipped to trust your own emotional instincts. So when betrayal comes, especially from the two people you never thought would do this to you, it doesn't arrive as just heartbreak. It arrives as identity loss, as grief for the version of life you thought you were living. It's not just her body that wandered. It's your sense of home that vanished. But there's something else, something deeper. Something tender. Sometimes she looks at you with sadness. You can't explain it. It's not pity, not anger, just a kind of wistful sorrow. As if she knows she's breaking your heart in slow motion and doesn't know how to stop. That's the part that confuses you the most. Because she still holds your hand in public. She still posts pictures of you. She still says, I miss you, when you're gone. But it all feels off. And when you confront her, if you ever find the courage, she denies. She swears it's in your head, that you're being paranoid, that he's like a brother to her. And those words, they slice you in places you didn't know could bleed. But here's what I want you to understand. You're not crazy. You're not weak for sensing this. You're not less of a man for being hurt. You are simply human. A man who loved, who trusted, and who noticed the energy shift long before the truth ever dared to surface. There's a moment, quiet, still, where you finally realize that you're living in a version of your relationship that no longer includes your full self. Not because you left, but because parts of you were slowly pushed out, replaced, not always with malice, but with carelessness, with emotional cowardice. And this brings us to the seventh sign, perhaps the most painful of all. You start to notice the rewriting of your shared history. She tells stories that used to belong to the two of you, but now she tells them differently. Her smile fades at memories you used to laugh at together. She downplays the moments that once made you strong. Or worse, she forgets them entirely. That inside joke that once made her eyes light up, now she brushes it off, says, oh, that's silly, and moves on. It's not forgetfulness. It's a quiet form of detachment, a rewriting of the emotional map that once connected you. Because when someone builds intimacy elsewhere, they often need to emotionally justify the shift by dismantling the intimacy you once had. And your best friend, he does the same. He stops reminiscing. Remember when conversations dry up, or they feel forced, and when you bring something up, an old trip, a bar night, a ridiculous bet you made, he tenses, like the memory belongs to a world that's no longer safe for him to revisit. This is what betrayal does. It creates silence where there was once laughter. It replaces warmth with caution. And it leaves you trying to hold together a version of reality that no longer exists. And yet, you still love her. That's the part that hurts the most, isn't it? You still want to believe in her, in what you had, in what you could still have. And so you stay, you try, you give her the benefit of the doubt. You tell yourself you're overthinking, that it's a phase, that they would never do something like that. Because to accept the truth would shatter something inside you. I want you to know that what you're feeling is valid, that betrayal isn't always confirmed with receipts or screenshots. Sometimes it's just that sinking, persistent ache in your soul, that ache that says something is wrong here and no one is saying it out loud. Now, I want you to take a breath, because this isn't just a video about heartbreak or revenge. It's about awakening, about learning how to trust your intuition again, not out of paranoia, but out of respect for your own emotional intelligence. Too many men live disconnected from their emotional radar. They've been taught that to feel deeply is to be weak, that asking questions is insecure, that doubting a friend or a partner is dishonorable. But let me offer you a new truth. You are not dishonorable for noticing when something is off. You are not weak for wanting to protect your heart. You are not foolish for loving deeply, even if that love was misplaced. You are brave. Brave for listening to the quiet parts of yourself that most men silence. brave for seeing the gaps between words and filling them with meaning, brave for loving in a world that often confuses sensitivity with weakness. And if you're watching this, because some part of you suspects, some part of you wonders if she crossed that line with him, I want you to know that you're not alone. Millions of men have been where you are. And no, they didn't all get the answers they hoped for, but they did get something else. Clarity. Eventually. Because the truth has a way of rising. It can't stay buried forever. Not when you're awake to it. Not when you stop silencing the signals. So what you do with this awareness, first you give yourself permission to grieve. Not just the possibility that she cheated, but the loss of innocence, the loss of safety, the loss of what you thought your friendship and your relationship were. Then you have the conversation. Not to accuse, not to corner, but to reclaim your voice. You look her in the eye and you say, something feels different. And I want to understand it because I deserve honesty. I deserve presence. I deserve truth. And if she denies, if he brushes it off, still you have spoken. You have honored the man in you who refused to stay silent, who asked the question, who let his intuition lead. And if the truth eventually confirms your suspicion, you do not crumble. You rise because betrayal, as devastating as it is, can be the fire that burns away the illusions. It can be the storm that clears the air. It can be the beginning of your return to yourself. You do not lose your power when she chooses someone else. You lose your power only when you forget who you are. You are a man capable of love, capable of depth, capable of healing. And one day, when you love again, whether it's with her, redeemed and rebuilt, or with someone new entirely, you'll carry this awareness with you, not as bitterness, but as wisdom. So take heart. The signs you've seen are not hallucinations. They are signals. The body knows. The soul knows, and now you know too. There is a moment after betrayal that is quieter than the moment of discovery itself. It's that in-between space where nothing has been fully confirmed, but everything inside you already knows, where the relationship still technically exists, the friendship is still intact, but your heart has already begun to let go. This space is lonely because you're not mourning a breakup. You're mourning a reality that no one else will name. You go through the motions, texts, dinners, laughs. But somewhere in the background, you're grieving the safety that once existed between you and her, and you and him. And maybe you haven't said anything out loud yet. Maybe you're still hoping that this is just a phase, that things will go back to the way they were, that if you just love a little harder, forgive a little faster, things might reset. But betrayal doesn't rewind. It changes the code of your connection. It makes you question not just them, but yourself. What did I miss? Why didn't I see it sooner? How did I let this happen? You start revisiting every interaction, every moment you left them alone, every time you trusted too easily. You interrogate your memories as if they were crime scenes. You look for signs you ignored. You wonder if your softness was your downfall, if your belief in people made you blind. But here's the truth. Trust is not a weakness. It is a gift. And if someone takes your trust and uses it as a cover for betrayal, the shame is not yours to carry. Let me say that again. Their betrayal is not a reflection of your failure. It is a reflection of their fear, their selfishness, their inability to confront their own emotional truth. Still, I understand. Because what hurts most is not that they made a mistake, it's that they made it together. That in some twisted way, the people who were supposed to protect your heart became co-conspirators in its breaking. And that fracture, it splits you in places you didn't know existed. For a man, this betrayal cuts differently, because men are taught to hold it all together, to be composed, stoic, rational. You're told not to make a scene, not to look weak, not to show pain. So instead of exploding, you implode, you withdraw, you distract yourself with work, with women, with workouts. You try to drown the ache with distractions, with control. You tell yourself you're fine, that it didn't matter, that they didn't deserve you anyway. But in quiet moments, late at night, alone in the car, staring at the ceiling in the dark, grief comes. And not the kind that makes you cry, the kind that makes you numb. So how do you heal? Not by pretending it didn't happen, not by moving on too quickly, not by seeking revenge or burying the hurt in pride. You heal by returning to the parts of yourself that they forgot to cherish, but you must now protect. You start by asking, who am I? Without their approval. You begin to remember the man you were before the betrayal, not in nostalgia, but in reawakening. You think back to the version of yourself that laughed freely, that trusted easily, that showed up with his whole heart and didn't apologize for it. You start doing things for yourself again, small things. You play music you love. You spend time with people who feed your soul. You move your body. You breathe deeply. You write. You rest. And most importantly, you speak. You find a space where you can say it out loud to a therapist, a coach, a journal, a friend who won't dismiss your pain or turn it into a joke. Someone who will listen without telling you to man up or get over it. Because to heal from betrayal, you must feel it. And to feel it, you must create space for your truth. You begin to understand that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. That understanding why someone did what they did does not mean you have to keep them in your life. That loyalty is a sacred thing, and when broken it requires more than just an apology. It requires transformation. Maybe she comes clean. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe your best friend admits his failure. Maybe he lies until the end, but none of that determines your future. Your healing is not dependent on their honesty. It's dependent on your decision to stop living in someone else's silence. And here's where it gets powerful. The man who walks through betrayal and still keeps his heart open, that man is dangerous in the best way, because now you don't just love blindly, you love with discernment. You don't just trust easily, you trust intentionally. You don't give your energy to everyone who smiles at you. You give it to those who have proven they can hold it with care. You're no longer afraid of being alone because you've met yourself in the dark. And now any relationship that enters your life has to match the love you've cultivated within yourself. This is the power of rising after betrayal. You stop chasing closure from people who were never brave enough to give it. You stop trying to explain your worth to people who were too broken to see it. And you begin again, not from bitterness, but from clarity. That is how a man reclaims his identity, not by hardening, but by deepening. You start showing up for yourself the way they didn't. You become the kind of man who can hold heartbreak without turning it into hate, who can feel betrayal and still choose integrity, who can walk away, not because he's afraid, but because he loves himself too much to stay where his spirit has been dishonored. You are not the wound. You are the healing. You are not the betrayal. You are the comeback. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to do next. When you finally stop asking, why did she do it? Or how could he betray me? And instead start asking, what am I still carrying that I need to let go of? That's when the healing truly begins. Because forgiveness isn't something you give them. It's something you give yourself so you can walk forward unchained. The truth is, betrayal is not just a break in trust. It's a spiritual wind. It fractures your sense of reality, of belonging, of emotional safety. And when it happens between the woman you've loved and the brother you trusted, it's not just painful. It's disorienting. It shakes your masculine core. You think, if I wasn't enough for her, will I ever be enough for anyone? You wonder if he could lie to me so easily. Does real loyalty even exist? And deeper down, you begin to question, if I could miss the signs this time, how can I ever trust myself again? This is the sacred work. The work of returning home to yourself. Not the self defined by others, the loyal boyfriend, the funny friend, the provider, the protector, but the man underneath all of that. The man you are when there's no one to impress, no one to perform for, just you, your breath, your truth. This version of you, the one that rose from the rubble of betrayal, is wiser. He no longer gives his energy cheaply. He no longer pretends not to see what he sees. He no longer shrinks his voice just to keep peace in rooms where truth is treated like a threat. He has learned that silence, when weaponized, is not strength, it's self-betrayal. So he speaks now. He sets boundaries, not out of fear, but from clarity. He no longer begs to be chosen, because he understands the woman who is truly for him will never make him question whether she is. And that best friend, he no longer holds a seat at your table, not because you're bitter, but because peace is too expensive to share with people who once used your vulnerability as a bridge to their own desires. You begin to see clearly that love without respect is chaos, that friendship without loyalty is performance, that smiles mean nothing when they come from mouths that kiss behind your back. You may feel anger still, and that's okay. Anger is a sign that your boundaries were violated, but eventually it gives way to something far more powerful: indifference. Not the cold kind, but the liberating kind. The kind where your happiness no longer depends on her apology or his confession. The kind where you don't need justice to move on. The kind where your peace is no longer held hostage by unspoken truths. And then something beautiful happens. You start to notice the people who do show up. The friend who checks in without being asked. The woman who listens when you speak, not just with her ears, but with her heart. The moments where laughter returns, not as a distraction, but as a sign that your spirit is healing. You begin to build again, not out of desperation, but from abundance. You create a life that doesn't need to be proven to anyone. A life that feels like you, honest, grounded, alive. And one day you'll love again. Maybe she'll come softly, with eyes that remind you of home. Maybe she'll be fierce, with fire in her soul and loyalty in her bones. But whoever she is, you will know what you never knew before, that true intimacy cannot exist without safety. That loyalty isn't proven in grand gestures, but in the quiet, consistent honoring of your heart. And when that woman comes, and she will, if your heart remains open, you will not hold her accountable for the wounds another left. You will not make her earn your love through punishment or suspicion, because you have done the work. You have cried the silent tears. You have bled emotionally in private. And now you are free. This journey hasn't made you less of a man. It has revealed the man you were always becoming. You are not defined by her betrayal. You are not broken by his silence. You are reborn by the fire they forced you to walk through. Stronger, clearer, more honest, and more capable of love than ever before. Not because you trust blindly, but because you now love wisely. So if you're still sitting with the still wondering if you imagined it, still feeling that low burn of suspicion, know this: you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are just a man learning to listen to the whisper of his own knowing. And that, my friend, is power. So take this pain and let it become your teacher. Let it sharpen your discernment. Let it deepen your empathy. Let it expand your heart, not close it. Because one day, someone will hold that heart with both hands, fully, bravely, without hesitation. And when they do, you'll know. Because you've already learned what it feels like to have it dropped. And you'll never allow that again.